feeding him as a human being. And we know from everything that we've heard this morning that what feeds us as human beings, what gives us joy, what we are part of, is the natural world. And so this disconnect, I am sure, is part of all this horror that we're hearing about young people. I'm not young anymore. I've got kids now, 18, young university level. It's terrifying how many of their friends have mental health issues. It's terrifying. That's not normal. This isn't normal. And yet we're kind of treating it as normal. And this great disconnect where we go into our heads and we think of everything as big concepts, and we're not local anymore, but we're kind of global citizens with huge problems to solve that we're putting onto the next generation, and yet everybody's footloose and not rooted, I think produces tremendous angst in people. And all this is happening at a time when we have these great icons that come onto our screens every day, images of a world falling apart. So we've got these great icons of disaster, polar bears looking like they're just about to drown, oil spills, that horrendous little sequence with an orangutan trying to fight off a digger trying to rip up its rainforest, the koala bear that got burnt so badly it had to be put down the other day in the bushfires in Australia. And all these kids are watching this, and they're thinking, this is our planet, And yet I've got to go to school now and I'm going to learn about something which I have no idea why I'm learning it really, but I'm told it's vital for my future. And it may well be because the world's still working like that. We're still back in the 1940s and 50s. We're not in the 2020 anymore. I think we're in a huge transitional change. So, even in this country, in England, look at England's biodiversity declining by all this stuff. This is happening at a time when our young people are more and more disconnected from the natural world than they have ever been in history. Right? So, half of the UK's children can't identify stinging nettles. Can you imagine that? I had a friend, I work did for 25 years, I was a producer at the BBC Natural History Unit, both radio and television, and one of my colleagues used to go around to schools, take little clips of film, and he played a sound to a room of kids. And he said, anybody know? Can anybody tell me what that sound is? And someone said, is it a robin? It was a humpback whale. So there was a real problem with this understanding, this visceral nature of who and what we are and what's out there. Even the stuff in your back garden doesn't really mean very much to you. And it's a great shame, isn't it? Because we've heard all about it. We've heard all about this joy and awe and wonder and what it's like to sort of get your hands dirty, what it's like to sort of feel desolate when it's raining too hard and you can't do your field work or whatever it is. All that adds in to what it is to be a human being on a living, breathing, changing planet all the time. So I think we're getting our approach to producing the future naturalists, the people who are qualified and who will make the right decisions for the future of this planet. We've got a whole of our approach wrong. I said to my son, he's 18 now, and I said he did A-level biology, and I said he'd just come back from a field trip. He only did 2 nights away, 3 days in the field. And I said to him, what did you do? And he said, we just kind of wandered around a beach and up a sand dune or something. And I said, did you learn to identify any plants and things? Could you name things? He said, don't be silly. He said, we don't do that. We just kind of put quadrants out and count things and things. He said, but we don't name anything. What a shame that is, hey? He got an A, and he's at University Imperial doing science. I wouldn't trust him in a fieldwork situation. He wouldn't have a clue what he was doing. But he got an high A. And I find that shocking. I said to him, you're a travesty, you shouldn't be at university. So, I don't know what it is, but I started to think, 2011, I thought something is going seriously wrong here. We are not producing the people who think and feel what they're doing. They're not feeling this planet, and they're not being taught in the ways to make it right. I really do think that's true. And so I, in a flash, came up with this idea of a GCSE in natural history. And I tried it out on Tony Juniper, who happened to come into a room that I was in. It was a bit weird. Anyway, Tony Juniper came in, didn't know him, never met him before in my life. And I said, "You're Tony Juniper, what do you think about a GCSE in natural history in 2011? And he said, "That's a great idea." And we talked about it for a bit, and he wrote an article for The Guardian, and it kind of was a bit of a buzz of excitement, then it died. And I got on to do other things, and then in 2017 I tried again. And I got another journalist interested, and I put out a petition and so on. And we got enough signatures to get a response from the government, but the petition was pulled early because of the snap election. And then it kind of died a death again. But that was what I wrote back in 2011. A proposal for a GCSE in natural history, and what is it? It's really interesting, because what I put in there is not just the recording, the monitoring, the naming, the getting out there and getting that messy data and making sense of it, of being that sense of knowing your local park and what's in there. You don't have to go to the Serengeti, you don't have to go and chase polar bears. You just go down to your local park and monitor through the seasons. Notice what birds migrate. Notice what colour the leaves are at different times of the year. Notice what insects come in and out and what's going on. But not only that, crucially, it has to have a connection to culture, which is why I asked that question earlier. We have to know what it is, this inspiration of this natural world, how it's fed us creatively. Beethoven's Fifth, the beginning, da-da-da-da, an ortolan bunting. That's what Beethoven heard when he went on his walks. He heard an ortolan. That is the song of an ortolan, out of which we get Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. That's a really simple example, but you look back through the history of literature and art and poetry and music, and the natural world is everywhere. It's threaded right the way through how we express ourselves as human beings. It's right the way through how we talk about ourselves, in similes and in metaphors, in folklore, in mythology. We put all of our human angst onto the natural world and let it reflect back to us what we are as people. If we let the natural world slip away, which is what we're doing, we lose all that inspiration and creativity. And where would you go to replace it? Because I can't think of anywhere else. So that was the GCSE in natural history petition. That's when we got to just over 10,000. You need 10,000 to get a government response. And they got that really quickly, and then they pulled it. All petitions are pulled once they announce a general election. Thank you, Mrs. May. And so we got a response back from the government, said, there, dear, we're doing it anyway, and why don't you just go away, is basically what it said. You can read the response. And then I was at a loss, really. I didn't know what to do then, because I'm not a political animal. I work in the media and in writing and campaigning and so on, but I don't know how to move these things forward. Until I got on Twitter a personal message from Caroline Lucas, who said, really interested in this idea. I've just caught up with it after all these years. She said, how can I help? Suddenly, we were off. Suddenly, Caroline Lucas made it happen. So we went to see then the Secretary of State for the Environment, Michael Gove. We went into his big office. It's very scary. And has anyone met Michael Gove personally in his big office? And it's quite scary. He sits on this big chair and you sink into this sofa that goes down and down. He is really scary. And you're not allowed to touch his chair or anything. And anyway, he was really supportive of GCSE in natural history, and he put us on to somebody at the Oxford and Cambridge Exam Board, who is sort of Mr. sort of GCSE development for the Oxford and Cambridge Board, Tim Burt, who's been fantastic. And to cut a long story short, he's pushed it through all sorts of places. We went to see Nick Gibb, the schools minister. He's got buy-in from Ofqual to say they'd be happy to oversee it. So now we just need to know who the hell is going to be in charge so we can get on to the next stage and push it through with a possible plan of it's in schools in 2021. That's where we are at the moment. There's still a couple of hurdles to go through. Thank you. But this isn't just a GCSE with a bit of practical biology. This is something different. This is what Ian was talking about. It's what Alain de Botton, the philosopher, talked about. I listened to a podcast of his the other day, and he said, for the life of me, he said, I can't understand when you go into a museum, an art gallery, you have a chamber that says 17th century art, and then 18th century art, and then 19th century art. He said, that's nonsense. Who cares? He said, I want to see a chamber that says love. I want to go into a room that says hate. I want to know how we've interpreted in art all these very human things. Well, in a way, this is what a GCSE in natural history is. It's how understanding and have a relationship with those very things of this planet have made us what we are. So this guy called David Shinley, I just forgot to put him on my slide, who is an ecologist at the University of New Mexico, wrote something great. He said, a naturalist is the person who is inexhaustibly fascinated by biological diversity and who does not view organisms merely as models or vehicles for theory, but rather as the thing itself that excites our admiration and our desire for knowledge, understanding, and preservation. What a great quote that is. Well, that's what a GCSE in natural history is. Creating people who don't just sink into their own heads and think big models, but think planet. So, Mars Richardson, University of Derby, really should be here today. How do you connect? How do you create really engaged people who really work with you, who really want to change the planet and work with it in a meaningful way? And he says, this is his words, not mine, we've got to have the senses tuning into the nature through the senses, emotion feeling alive through emotions and feelings nature brings, beauty noticing nature's beauty, it's got to have meaning and bringing in meaning to our lives, we've heard a lot about that, and compassion, caring and taking action for nature. If you can put those into the study of nature, if you can put motion, beauty, meaning, compassion and senses into the study of nature, then you will produce people who are literally engaged. Which is why description and classification and interpretation of the natural world in human culture and the ways this has changed over time will be absolutely essential to this qualification. So you'll have everybody, like I said, from Darwin to Shakespeare to David Attenborough to Ian Stewart to everybody else who is changing the planet through communication and through culture and through engaging people, really engaging people. Debussy, wow, you know, the music of Debussy, bringing that which is entirely immanent into being. He said, when he created music, he said, it's like I look into nature and it sings back at me. Isn't that what we want in our kids, to understand that? Aren't they the sort of people that are going to make the right decisions about whether we build another runway or not? So, Ray DeYoung, another American, if environmental education worked, we wouldn't be having the problems we're having. Hear, hear. So that's the problems we're having. Look at the plastic revolution. More than 27,000 species are threatened with extinction around the globe. And I think where I think Ian was so spot on is that it's all about story. So if we're going to change this around, if we're going to do something different, if we're going to envisage, if we have the imagination to make this world a different place, then we've got to start telling different stories to our kids. And Blue Planet 2 did it, didn't it? It showed a whale playing with a bucket. It showed a seahorse with its tail wrapped round an earbud. And suddenly we've had a plastics revolution. They didn't do it by giving everybody statistics. They did it by showing, not telling. Showing, not telling, which is what Ian was doing. Showing, not telling. And I think that's what really goes to people's hearts. That's what creates revolution. I can't remember his name. There was a bloke who wrote, an academic, who wrote a book in the 70s called The Structure of Revolution. And he looked at what inspired human society to revolt. What is it that made your butcher's boy go and sign up to join in the French Revolution? What is it that made you put yourself in danger like that? And he said, you can change the world, he said, not by telling people that they're wrong, not by captaining discontent, not by trying to persuade them that your way is better. He said, you do it by kindling and fanning an extravagant hope. You kindle and fan an extravagant hope. Because if we don't pass on hope to the future generations now, we have utterly, utterly failed. So my hero, environmentalist John Muir, let children walk with nature, let them see the beautiful blendings and communions of death and life, their joyous and separable unity, as taught in woods and meadows, plains and mountains, and streams of this blessed star. Well, I think if that was hung on every single school wall and it was taught in every school, we'd probably be looking at a different future than we're looking at the moment. Thank you very much.
Well, Mary, that was inspiring. Thank you very much. I'm sure we've got time for a question or two if anybody has got one that they would like to ask.
I think it's a fantastic idea, but who would teach it? You have to get teachers who are as passionate as you are, and I think you and David Attenborough and a few others would make great teachers, but there's a lot of schools out there. How would you communicate the passion to the teaching fraternity?
I think we'll go through a transition phase. I mean, I think we have to have this period where we train teachers, and we have to have a real concerted money put into training teachers to do that, because the knowledge is out there. Look at all the naturalists there are in this room that could help train teachers until we get those people through the system. So it's a kind of temporary problem, really. But if we want to do it, we will teach teachers to do it properly. And I've had young people say to me, these are sort of early 20s and so on, you know, I'd give up my job and train to be a teacher if I could do that. So I think there's the will out there. Do you know more young people watch Blue Planet 2 than watch The X Factor? More young people. So there is a real desire for this stuff, and if we don't teach it, we're letting everybody down. So we can't let something practical like that, we just throw money at it.
Sorry, I'm all for this, so my point is not being made, is not necessarily negative, but one of the things that grates, I mean, words are important, and natural history, I would suggest, is a backward-looking word, and it's going to be looked on as not cool or not modern, and I think that might be a negative thing, and despite the fact that I'm very positive about it, and it's a bit like the word botany. You know, I don't, Mike and Mark might have a comment on this, but I mean, is there any university in Britain that has a botany department anymore with the word botany in it? Maybe one. Because, yes.
Which is very confusing because plant science, when you Google it, it comes up as the science of industrial plants.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is the word has not helped botany. It's been changed.
Well,
and the thing that worries me about this is that might have the same connotation. I really hope not.
I disagree with you. We've debated this endlessly, I tell you. But would you change the Natural History Museum to something else? Would you change the Would you change the Natural History Unit to the BBC to something else? No, because it's recognised. And I think alongside that term natural history comes the whole of that wealth of, we are the best studied country in the world because we have the longest history of people studying. So we have that connotation in it as well as being institutions for the future. You know, David Attenborough wouldn't have been voted the coolest man on the planet by teenagers if natural history was thought of as a bit uncool.
It's called Blue Planet.
Yeah, out of the Natural History Unit. Yeah. I'm not sure. Lots of people have said it. Nature GCSE? Oh, a bit wishy-washy, don't you think? I think it's. I think we should be proud of our tradition of natural history, and we should carry it on.
Good. Well, thank you on that little note of controversy. Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our final speaker, who is the Silviu Chief Executive of Thompson. I hope something not too controversial. Our strategy, and these strategy leaflets will be upstairs, so afterwards you'll be able to have a look in more detail if you'd like to see a little bit more. I hope you found today inspirational. I certainly have, and I don't want to steal Des and Olwen's thunder, who'll be summing up later, but it's been really great listening to all that everyone has had to say today. And what's been really reassuring from my perspective is that what it's done is it reinforces what we've got in our strategy. And I think from that perspective, it's been really great. So thank you to everyone. So as we draw to a close today and with the reception beckoning, what I'd like to do is to take a few minutes to talk to you about our 20 to 2025 strategy. I spent my earliest years in an environment where spending time outdoors was normal. It was where we played and where we learned. I now know how lucky I was. Brought up in the Ayrshire countryside, surrounded by people who were at home with nature, they inspired my curiosity. Farm workers who seemed to know and really care about nature. They had their views. They loathed magpies, took great care over peewees or lapwings when they were nesting in the fields. They hated ragwort. They picked brambles, sloes, and mushrooms. They taught me as they themselves had been taught. Entering formal education at my village primary school, which is now an Indian restaurant, Mrs. Young would take us outdoors at every opportunity. Doing sums in the nearby woods was much more fun than in the classroom. It sounds idyllic, and looking back, I think it was. At my secondary school, the opportunities continued and included residential trips to the Isle of Arran. On one occasion, my geography teacher, Mr. Miller, a former Bomber Command navigator, took us to Goat Fell, the island's highest peak, to do geography fieldwork. While we were there, we visited the wreckage of a Bristol Beaufort, which crashed there in August 1942. He talked about how the landscape and weather conspired to confuse the crew. He was an inspirational teacher, one of many who helped set my path. I wanted an outdoor life, and I wanted to travel. The army seemed to offer both, and it lived up to my expectations for well over 30 years. Soon after I started at the FSC, I joined a group of children from inner city Birmingham, one of our centres. It was wet and it was cold, and they were grumpy. They didn't want to leave the classroom. They asked why we didn't heat their wellies up, and what was the point of going outdoors. I saw that same group when they returned from their field trip. It was still wet and it was still cold, but they had stories to tell, and they had bonded as a group. Those children who had not had the opportunities that I had had were subsidised by a bursary fund, and they were really inspired that day. The FSC was founded in the middle of a war, in fact, just over 2 miles from here. Some 50 years before, for many of the much more familiar Forest Stewardship Council, another FSC, which we're often confused with. Our first meeting was held in a bomb-damaged natural history museum where our visionary founders planned for a brighter post-war future. Their foresight established a charity with purposes that have arguably, since the FSC start, become even more important on the political and social agenda. The need for inspirational places to study nature at first hand. The need to provide environmental education for all ages and all abilities. The need to protect and to preserve the environment. At that dark time in our nation's history, their foresight is made all the more remarkable by the fact that in 1943, women could not fully graduate from one of our most prestigious universities. Indeed, the quota limiting the number of female students to a quarter of men was not removed at Oxford until 1957. The NHS, that prized national institution, was not formed until 1948. Our first national park in the Peak District, not until 1951. And for those who remember it, free school milk began in 1946. 75 years on, Natural England's Monitor of Engagement with the Natural Environment on Mean survey, which presents headline findings and includes analysis of 10 years of data from 2009 to 2019, makes interesting reading. 9 in 10 adults in England were concerned about damage to the natural environment. Public awareness and concern about biodiversity decline was at a high, up 13 percentage points in 5 years. Health and exercise was the most common reason for spending time outside, with a substantial increase over the last decade. What we do was relevant in 1943 and is probably more relevant and urgent now. A recent BBC headline stated, it's been by far the greenest campaign in UK election history, with parties pledging tougher policies on the environment and climate change. So turning to our new strategy. A strategy and a vision should give a clear sense of what we aspire to achieve. We want to inspire everyone to be curious, knowledgeable, passionate, and caring about our environment. The journey starts with curiosity, and that's important. As Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, "I have no particular talent, I'm merely inquisitive." The FSC's roots remain firmly in education and fieldwork, and the belief that their benefits should be available for everyone. We continue to face the same challenges as our founders as we work to overcome the barriers to our goals. There remains a need to provide high-quality environmental education that is accessible to all, not just to those who can afford it. Those that are likely to benefit most are often the least able to take advantage of the opportunities that first-hand experiences and awe-inspiring places can provide. Residential experiences away from home and exploring the real world outside the classroom are not guaranteed for every child. First-hand practical science and fieldwork can easily be squeezed out of a busy school timetable. Easy access to high-quality green and blue environments is not available for everyone. People will only want to protect the environment if they firstly care about it. And we cannot expect them to care about something that they have not connected to or experienced in any way. Despite public interest in environmental issues, what we see is a decline in the length of stays at our centres and fewer pupils attending. School budgets are being pressed hard, and for many, the emphasis on STEM education conjures images of labs and white coats, not outdoors and wellies. Indeed, one teacher related being told that taking kids out of school for a biology field trip would disrupt their education. In setting our strategy for the next 5 years, we've done so knowing that the world faces the two biggest challenges of our time: climate change and biodiversity loss. We need everyone to not only care about the danger that our planet faces, but to have the knowledge and the ability to take action. Our new strategy is a response to this, remaining true to our founding objectives while seeking to increase our impact to reflect the urgent threat to our environment. Our vision is clear. We want everyone to be curious, knowledgeable, passionate, and caring about our environment. By creating a world where everyone feels connected to the environment, we'll help them to enjoy the benefits it gives, but also to make choices that help to protect it. We want to do more, and we want to reach more. To achieve this, we will aim to create outstanding opportunities that inspire everyone to engage with and care for the environment. We're not trying to become an overtly campaigning organisation. There are many excellent campaigning organisations out there already. We see our role being to develop and equip people with both the knowledge and the passion to become effective advocates and campaigners. The recent climate change protests have shown that there are already many people passionate about the environment, but we need them to be informed and knowledgeable as well, so they do something useful with that passion. Getting people outdoors can be the first step to engaging their curiosity about the natural world. For some, it can ignite a lifelong passion for nature. Therefore, we want to reach more people beyond our well-established work with schools, universities, and professional learners. We'll do more by offering lifelong learning opportunities and activities to engage new learners of all ages. And if they can't come to us, we will go to them. Our network of field centres with our expert staff will deliver high-quality educational programmes. We'll do more beyond our centres, developing new informal programmes to connect more people with nature in their local communities. We'll build on our reputation of providing excellent learning resources, including digital opportunities to enhance real-world learning experiences. We'll do more to ensure a sustainable approach to all our work, practicing what we teach by investing in our centres and activities to reduce our own environmental footprint. This year, we gained national recognition by being awarded the Game Changer of the Year award by the Environmental Sustainability Network Fit for the Future. Having switched to 100% renewable energy tariff, we've reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 34% since 2011. We'll do more to promote sustainable lifestyles to our visitors, 165,000 last year, during their stays with us, but also seek to do that when they leave. We'll increase the impact of their time with us by equipping them with the knowledge and understanding to make a difference, helping them to become advocates for sustainability too. We'll aim to nurture their health and happiness and their confidence through outdoor learning, doing more to help our visitors make the most of the multiple benefits that being outdoors and connecting to nature will bring. We know that the mean report records health and exercise was the most common reason for spending time outdoors. There's evidence that spending time in forests, hiking in mountains, and just being outside can lead to significant health benefits. Indeed, studies have shown that walking in the woods can improve blood pressure, boost mental health, and even decrease cancer risk. We need to give people the confidence to get outdoors. For the health benefits it brings, we must also equip them with the knowledge and the passion to care for the environment that is helping them. Our new strategy builds on a long history, our credibility, our reputation for providing high-quality outdoor learning, and our reputation for providing high-quality learning. We'll continue our advocacy work, but reach beyond our traditional campaigns of education and the environment. We'll aim to influence a wider audience, including decision makers, and to demonstrate the multiple benefits of outdoor learning for both people and for the planet. The challenge facing our nation in 1943 was a grim one. The challenge facing our species and many others today is potentially catastrophic. It's against this background that those of us who appreciate all that the outdoors has to offer must work together on a joint agenda to promote the outdoors, environmental understanding and sustainability to ensure that in another 75 years, the opportunities that we have today will continue to exist for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. As you know, I'm very excited about the strategy over the next 5 years. This is not so much a question, it's just a bit of a comment for the room, really. I was discussing with some colleagues at lunchtime about diversity, and we've heard some great talks this afternoon that have been really reassuring about the direction of travel there. But one area that I feel has been a bit missed out is actually older people. There's a lot of focus on young people, and I appreciate the importance of getting people in young and what that will do for us in the future. But we need a lot of action now by the people that we have now. So I just wondered if there's anything you can pull out of the strategy in terms of how we engage adults and ageing adults. And I think that probably links to some of the health agenda as well.
Yeah, I would say very definitely we're trying to inspire everyone. And inspiring everyone includes old, young, and well, anyone we can inspire. We see when it comes to young people, to a certain extent, we have an audience that come to us because the institutions bring them to us. We need to reach much more broadly than those who are, if you like, sponsored by their institutions. When it comes to engaging with older people, our natural history courses tend to be the vehicle at the moment we use, but there is much more. And the health and well-being agenda allows us to engage in a different way with some of those groups than we have done before. The key thing is that we draw them in by appealing, if you like, to the benefit that they will derive from getting outdoors, and at that time use that opportunity to inspire them about the benefits of engaging with the environment and to care for the environment. And so very definitely they're on our target list.
Time for one more question if anybody's got one. If not, then thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know that Des and Olwen are going to just bring the meeting to a close, our joint hosts, if you like, and Des is going to go first.
Thank you, Tim. And if I may start by just echoing what you said, Mark, it has been a great day. It's been a fantastic day. We've had some brilliant presentations, frankly, and thank you all for embracing this in the spirit you have. Before I say a few closing words and then hand over to Olwen, I just wanted to thank all the speakers and chairs, actually, because actually I can't remember in recent times being at an event where we've had such a diversity of truly enriching presentations. And actually I count it as a privilege to have been here today, to have heard them in this very special room. I want to thank Susan Appleyard for attending to the arrangements, along with Leanne Melbourne and Elizabeth Rollison, and of course Olwen for making us so welcome. Please join me in applauding. You see, my fear was the last time I did this, I said some words of thanks and then forgot to thank people properly. So I wanted to say that first. Some of the words and phrases we've heard today are really resonating widely. Passion, contemplation, curiosity, inspiration, awe, caring, wonder, love, memorable, warmth, well-being, disconnect. Phrases like naming species, big data, outdoor learning. We need to build stories, real stories around this. Thinking of what Mary and Ian were saying, we need to be good at seeing, opening our eyes to the wider world, as Roger was saying. We need to be evidence-led, and there's so much more we can do to build on the evidence base that's so important. Looking ahead, the FSC was formed during the war years. Well, we are at war now. We are at war to prevent climate heating and to save nature. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. A climate emergency is not hollow. We face a climate emergency. We face a nature emergency. And we have to do what we can individually and collectively to tackle that. We need to work together to what Ian, I think, so admirably calls the sense and respond space. We need to operate in that space. We need to talk to people, work with people, listen to people we don't normally engage with. So I very much hope that following today, we can develop ideas collectively with the partner bodies here and others. I say to you this, nature needs us and we need nature. And these needs are best met in the field through learning, enjoying and loving nature, through listening to it, touching it and seeing it. Thank you very much.
It's going to be difficult to top that. But I wanted to say once again what a pleasure it's been to host this particular meeting to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Field Studies Council, arguably one of the UK's most pivotal organisations, along with the likes of the Linnean Society and others mentioned during the day, about really addressing this climate emergency. We had a series of thoroughly enjoyable talks addressing the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in now, highlighting how enjoyable fieldwork is, how critical it is for building that evidence base, so for science, but as well as for education, and also addressing long-standing inequalities in education and in the communities in the UK. So we've also heard that some of these issues have been known for a very long while. We know that as professionals and as experts, as scientists. But this message that we can't continue to apply the models that have previously worked in fulfilling our objectives and doing our work, I think is the critical take-home message. I agree as well that today was a particularly important day to hear perspectives from tomorrow's leaders, essentially, and hopefully tomorrow's politicians as well. So I would also like to just echo Des's point that it's the FSC, the Linnean Society, and all of our sister organisations that have a role to help pull in the right direction, as well as influence academics, policies, education, etc. So thank you all very much for being here today, for contributing your thoughts and discussion. It's been an absolute pleasure, and do come back again soon. Thank you.
All about all the different groups, but I feel that you have left out museums, those natural history museums that may be slightly uncool, but I actually think that we're very useful as well in contributing to this story, and that we have a lot to offer. And I'll just do one little story about taking school kids away on field work. And they, obviously, everyone else is doing bats and really exciting stuff and climbing up trees, and I'm killing flies. So I've got the least favourable subject. Everyone's like, you're disgusting, you're revolting, this is terrible. But by the end of the day, they were loving it. And that was great. But what was really great was they were able to come to the museum a year later, and I was able to pull out those flies and say, that's a new species to science. You have now contributed to a great global picture. So these people can go back, they can see their work, they can understand. So I want to encourage you to get all your students to put all their specimens, all their data into these collections, because they will be there forever, and they're so useful to help build this picture of why we need to save the planet. Thank you.